There's a man right now, maybe someone you know, who thinks about you way more than you could ever imagine. Your face pops into his mind dozens of times throughout the day. Your voice, your laugh, the way you move through the world. And here's the thing, he might not even understand why this is happening. This isn't about some creepy obsession or shallow attraction. This is something much deeper that I discovered after decades of studying how the human mind really works. This is about the most powerful force that exists in a man's soul. A force so strong it can completely transform his entire life. Yet it's so subtle that most women completely miss it when it's happening right in front of them. If you've ever wondered if someone truly cares about you, if you've been confused by mixed signals, or if you want to understand what really drives a man's deepest emotions, what I'm about to share will change everything you thought you knew about love and what motivates us as human beings. Most people think motivation comes from external things, money, success, recognition. But what I learned from working with thousands of patients is that the most powerful motivation comes from the unconscious, from forces we barely understand but cannot resist. And when it comes to love, this unconscious motivation becomes the driving force behind every single thing a man does. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Men don't fall in love the way most people think they do. They don't just wake up one day and decide they care about someone. Instead, something ancient wakes up inside them, what I call the lover archetype. This is a primal force that's been guiding masculine behavior for thousands of years. When this archetype activates, it doesn't just create feelings. It creates an unstoppable motivation that completely rewrites a man's priorities, his goals, and his entire sense of purpose in life. But here's the tragedy I saw over and over in my practice. Women have been taught to look for the wrong signals. They wait for words, for promises, for big romantic gestures, while completely missing the quiet language of deep masculine motivation. They misinterpret the very signs that show a man's soul is calling out to theirs. I remember one patient who told me, "Dr. Jung, I don't understand what's happening to me. I've always been focused on my career, my achievements, and my personal goals. But now everything I do somehow connects back to her. It's not that I've lost my ambition, it's that my ambition has found a deeper purpose." This man had discovered what I call the integration of personal motivation with relational motivation, the most powerful force I've ever observed in human psychology. The problem is that modern society has taught men to suppress this integration. From childhood, boys learn to separate their emotions from their drive for success. They're told that showing vulnerability is weakness, and being motivated by love makes them less of a man. So they develop defenses, sophisticated ways of hiding the very motivation that could transform not just their relationships, but their entire approach to life. But the unconscious never lies. While a man's conscious mind might resist or make excuses, his unconscious motivation reveals itself through patterns of behavior that are impossible to fake. What fascinates me most is how this unconscious motivation operates through universal principles. When the lover archetype activates in a man's psyche, it follows predictable patterns. The first principle is gravitational focus. Just like gravity bends space and time, true love bends a man's attention, energy, and motivation around the woman who has awakened his deepest self. The second principle is protective expansion. His motivation doesn't get smaller, it expands toward creating a secure space where this precious connection can grow. The third principle is temporal expansion. His motivational time frame fundamentally shifts from immediate gratification to thinking in terms of decades and lifetime commitments. Now let me share the first unmistakable sign of this deep masculine motivation, and it starts with something you see every day but probably never understood: the eyes. In all my years of studying human behavior, I discovered that the eyes are the most honest expression of where a man's motivation truly lies. I was working with a successful architect who felt completely unmotivated despite achieving everything he thought he wanted. During our sessions, his eyes were dull and unfocused. But the moment he mentioned a woman he had recently met, something extraordinary happened. His pupils dilated, his gaze intensified, and suddenly this man, who seemed emotionally dead, was radiating a life force I hadn't seen in months. This wasn't just an attraction, this was motivation finding its true north. The motivated man looks at you differently than any other man ever will. It's what I call the recognition gaze, a look that penetrates beyond your physical form to connect with something deeper. His unconscious is scanning for compatibility, for the harmony that will fuel his deepest motivations. His eyes are asking, is this the person who will inspire me to become my greatest self? The second powerful sign reveals itself in how a man manages his time and space. When his deepest motivational drives align with a woman, he doesn't just rearrange his schedule. He unconsciously reconstructs his entire relationship with reality itself. I once worked with a brilliant surgeon whose life was structured with military precision. Then he met a woman who awakened his integration drive. Within weeks, without any conscious decision, this man began making profound changes. He started leaving possibility space for spontaneous connection. His apartment began showing signs of anticipated companionship. An extra coffee cup appeared. Books she had mentioned materialized on his reading table. This is motivated, restructuring the way a man's unconscious begins reorganizing his life, when his deepest drives recognize their perfect complement. Where he once focused on maximizing personal productivity, he began naturally incorporating what I call relational optimization, asking, how can I structure my time to create maximum opportunity for meaningful connection while still achieving my goals? The third sign emerges in what I call selective sanctification, the way a motivated man's memory becomes a sacred repository for everything connected to you. I worked with a historian who could recite facts with mechanical precision, yet his personal relationships felt forgettable. Then he met a woman who activated his sacred memory complex. Suddenly, he was describing conversations with her in vivid emotional detail months later. He remembered not just what she said, but the exact way sunlight fell across her face when she said it. When a man's unconscious recognizes its perfect complement, it doesn't just form memories, it creates living monuments. Each significant interaction becomes a psychological landmark that continues to motivate him. The quality of what he remembers is revealing. The deeply motivated man remembers moments of revelation when you shared a fear you'd never voiced, when you expressed a dream that resonated with his deepest aspirations. The fourth sign is future integration, the unconscious reorganization of a man's entire temporal motivation around a shared destiny. I remember a successful entrepreneur who was completely focused on building his business empire. Then he experienced what I call future fusion. Suddenly, his business goals began evolving. He started making decisions based not only on profit potential, but also on whether they would enhance the kind of future he wanted to build with her. His individual future doesn't just include you, it becomes inconceivable without you. The fifth sign is protective expansion, the way his motivation to shield and nurture extends to every aspect of your growth. This isn't controlling behavior, it's the natural expression of love as a motivating force for enhancement. The protectively motivated man becomes unconsciously attuned to everything that affects your well-being. He notices when you're stressed before you mention it. He creates conditions that support your growth because your flourishing has become integrated into his own sense of purpose. When you can recognize these signs, the motivated gaze, the restructuring of time and space, sacred memory preservation, future integration, and protective expansion, you're witnessing something most people never experience. You're seeing the complete reorganization of another human being's motivational universe around your growth and happiness. This is not casual affection. This is love as a transformative force that creates rather than diminishes, that motivates rather than drains. When you know what real love looks like, you'll never again be satisfied with substitutes.